First of all, I'll introduce our panel. We have Dr. Ezra Suruma to my immediate left. He's a former finance plan economic development director of the Uganda Commercial Bank at that time. It's now owned by Stanbic and known by the eponymous name. You most welcome Dr. Suruma. To my extreme left, we have Dr. Jacqueline Makaru. She works with the court. She's got a PhD. She's got a doctorate degree in economic policy. You're welcome, Dr. Jacqueline Makaru. We're also joined by Honorable Miriam Matembe. Is she not on the panel? She's not. So we have three panelists. She has opted out, so it's all right. But I'd like to recognize her presence. We expect to be joined shortly by Mr. Fred Muhumuza. Fred Muhumuza is the economic advisor to the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. We expect him to join us shortly. Now, our topic is the political economy of donor aid, implications of aid cuts on service delivery, economic performance, and interventions by government. I'm going to ask Dr. Ezra Suruma to begin to talk to us about that topic, and then we'll have reactions from the other people. Dr. Jacqueline Makaru. There's one thing he'll probably want to talk about. He might not want to talk about it, but of late when we're talking about oil, he said, or he was quoted to have said in the media, that oil money should not be spent on building roads. He could have been misquoted because that money will eventually end up in foreign hands. He might want to talk about it. He might want to ignore it, but that's something we've read in the media lately. Dr. Ezra Suruma, you're most welcome.
It's a great privilege to be here this morning. I hope that you don't mind not recognizing everyone individually. All protocol observed, Mr. Chairman. I was very happy to see the title of discussion, political economy of aid, and I pretty much stopped there. I'm hoping that Dr. Muhumuza, who was my advisor in the Ministry of Finance, will cover the second part of the topic concerning the impact of the cuts. So I want to start by making observations about the political economy of aid. Last week I was holding a seminar at the Bible University on the political economy of oil. So I don't know if it's a coincidence that now I'm talking about the political economy of aid. I hope that the word political economy will become increasingly popular. Of course, that's the original name of economics. I think the earlier thinkers in this field recognized that economics and politics are very closely interlinked, and so-called political economy. Later on, we tried to advance economics as a science, and we thought the politics would take away from the scientific aspects of economics. I believe that dissociation was probably not very successful. It might appear so in classroom, but outside the classroom, it's very hard to separate economics from politics. Now, aid has many objectives. Some objectives of aid are political, some are humanitarian and some are economic. In some cases, aid may be intended to obtain military or strategic advantage for the donor. The aid which was targeted at northern Uganda in recent years, it's roughly 2006 to last year, was primarily humanitarian in nature. It's primarily humanitarian in nature. It was intended to provide relief to a part of the Ugandan population that had suffered from more than 20 years of brutal violence, isolation, and poverty. The design of aid and implementation of aid have continued to be controversial issues of aid and implementation of aid. Some donors prefer to design their aid through input. They do not place trust in the capacity of the recipient, government, administration. And so they devise their own programs and implement them with little or no input from the receiving country. In our experience, we have found, I would say, that US aid could fit this model. I hope it is safe for me to mention it. In the early years, the Global Fund was also accused of bypassing the Ministry of Finance in implementing its program. When their funds were misappropriated, they were criticized for bypassing the ministry, and thereafter they showed the intention to work more closely with the national government. Until the recent reports of misappropriation of donor funds, budget support had gained favor as the best mechanism for aid. Budget support meant foreign aid was transferred to government and the funds were commingled with domestic funds and appropriated by Parliament through the annual budget. So the budget support meant the money became part of our own money and we treated it as if it was our own money. Over the years, there was considerable confidence in the Integrated Financial Management System, IFMS, which was installed with much fanfare from the donors. Now, its integrity has been substantially compromised following the illegal leakages in the pensions payments and payments in the Office of the Prime Minister. The discovery of the leakages has led to the suspension of aid to Uganda by a number of donors, hence the fear that we are discussing today of the ultimate impact of this aid suspension. I want to take some time to discuss the impact on faith in public accounting. Although it was not explicitly included in the terms of reference I was given, I believe that it's a critical issue. Beyond the immediate impact on humanitarian aid and various macroeconomic variables is the impact on faith in public accounting. Loss of confidence in public accounting at a time when we are expecting large foreign exchange inflows from oil sales raises the question of the integrity of future financial flows. Accountability for public funds is a keystone of democratic governance. The power vested in the Constitution on Parliament to appropriate funds of government is the means through which the power is supposed to be exercised so that all expenditures of government are approved by the representatives of the people. When government revenue is increasingly spent in ways that have not been approved by the representatives of the people, it means that the concept of government of the people, for the people and by the people is no longer effective. The capacity to implement government by the people is simply not available, and therefore democratic governance is undermined. So what do we do? In my view, Uganda cannot afford to continue the loss of confidence in government accountability. Such a loss of confidence is tantamount to a loss of confidence in government's right to govern. Such a loss of confidence would lead to catastrophic consequences. Therefore, all of us should do everything in our power to restore confidence in government's ability to account faithfully and properly for the funds we as to the government. Yet the restoration of confidence is not a matter of wishful thinking. It comes from painful restoration of moral conduct, strengthening of accounting controls, and a convincing demonstration that public funds are being properly appropriated, closely monitored, and fully accounted for. The restoration of public confidence in accounting will not occur overnight. My personal view is that government might do well to admit its limits and slow down its growth while allowing the private sector to grow relatively faster. The easiest approach is to expand the opportunities for employment so that more and more citizens look more and more to themselves to account for the money they have earned rather than look to the government to spend the money for them, to them. Earn income, they are accountable to themselves first and foremost. They are also accountable to the government for the payment of taxes, and that of course here is that we need a healthier balance between private income and public income. The ever-growing expectation that the government has a capacity to feed, clothe, house, educate, diagnose, and treat the population is increasingly a very sad illusion. It is probably an expectation that is born out of a socialist dream in a country that is aspiring to liberal capitalism. The people of Uganda are looking towards the government for salvation. The politicians and the government are feeding these popular expectations by professing a determination to achieve prosperity for all. At the same time, the government professes free market capitalism despite the absence of the critical institutions of capitalism, such as accessible financial institutions, investment banks, and markets, to mention but a few. So maybe I could elaborate a little bit here. President Reagan was famous for saying that he believed in taxes. And I believe he pretty much succeeded. The basis for his refusal to increase taxes was that he said that the American people were better able to rather than government could spend it for them. So he was not in favor of taking money from the people in form of taxes and that people spend the money themselves and account themselves. So I'm saying that, I think Dr. Muhammad has arrived. I'm saying that the best way to help the people of Uganda is put money in their pockets, rather than to have a philosophy of maximizing government revenue and the illusion, in my opinion, that government, the bigger government, there is a continuing expression of sadness that Uganda collects only 13 or 14% of GDP instead of 18 for the rest of Africa and 20 or 30% for Europe. But in light of the fact that we cannot account even for the 13 or 40%, and when you add on the aid, then of course it becomes about 20 to 25%. It's not better to let more and more of the money to be spent by individuals themselves, by the private individuals, in the hands of government is not able to account for it, and let the increase in government revenue be proportionate to the capacity of government to actually account for that money. If you put it in the hands of government at the time when it is not able to account for the funds, it is clear that money is tantamount to being thrown away. So, I think that's in a nutshell. And I'm saying that the view that government can do so much for the population appears to have a socialist ideology behind it, if you like. Socialist dream is not borne out by the aspiration to be a capitalist economy. So there's some kind of a contradiction, having socialist aims but having capitalist methods. And the two don't seem to jive very well. You want a free market capitalism, at the same time you want to have prosperity for all, which appears to be socialistic in intent. And I'm not sure whether the two are going together very well. And I'm also saying that this economy, we don't have necessary institutions, particularly financial depth, financial markets, that would make a capitalist. Neither socialist nor capitalist. It's not institutions to account for public funds, and it does not have the necessary to invest and absorb into gainful employment a rapidly expanding population. Aid is supposed to fill some of these critical gaps, but it is a far cry from what is needed to meet effectively the humanitarian and employment gaps. What is the way forward? While donors have their political strategic objectives, that we try to encourage them to channel their aid in the following strategic needs for Uganda. 1, it is essential that we recognize and admit the limited capacity for accounting in the public sector. We should not try to sweep the problem under the carpet. Indeed, So we should admit that capacity for public accounting is and wanting. It is heresy for government to encourage and allow more aid to flow. For example, it can encourage donor governments actual products to the people in need. There will be some experts on work. They could comment, I don't know if example or not, of aid. And the flow of cheap capital, residential construction, intensive, and for the growing homeless young people. One of the areas of greatest need, gainful occupation for the youth. Aid should be provided directly to them. I was happy to read recently there are some plans to carry out mass construction, residential construction for the last several years, in which some funds from oil, population of as an opportunity. It's not just a problem, it's an opportunity. One of the ways that we can help is these places to live, and in the process of such homes would provide a large amount of kill two birds with one stone. One, and two, of and all the things to be, because I think about these young people are not going to here. Also encourage private sector accountability, encourage shareholders in enterprise, including finance. These institutions should account shareholders, the citizens, rather than or both. Concentrating on government-owned. Let us increase citizen-owned. So, we disbanded the Coffee Marketing Board. It was also government-owned. I'm saying if you are going to have a coffee marketing oil operation, let people all oil corporation will be done to them. And it's not given to the government. Direct accounting in which the citizens who are shareholders corporation meet in the board of directors, elect, they are doing a good job. More in the hands of which increasingly has security in actually out a proper accounting for the funds. Those the oil corporation will be than you or coffee market or fresh marketing of these institutions. I would prefer the accounting being direct. Similarly, in a bid to increase accountability, we should build a robust universal health insurance system to improve the quality of life of the whole population using the expected oil revenues. This would complement the universal pensions and universal education systems. So, there is in the new bill, public finance bill, an intention to create petroleum fund, part of it as a reserve, part of it, is my time out? Okay, I'm also almost out, thank you. And I think that although this is not the purpose of this forum, I think that we could go a little bit further in reducing the burden on the public sector to manage these funds by increasing participation and having direct benefit to the people. There is a statement that the money will not be spent on recurrent, that will only be on development projects and infrastructure. I think that's what the chairman wanted me to comment on, which means you will have to give me an extra minute. I think that we have to revisit our concept of economics, understanding of economics. There used to be a time when the physiocrats, a group of economists called the physiocrats, said that only mining and agriculture were useful sectors that created real value, that the other sectors were not useful. We have long discarded that kind of thinking. The idea that certain areas have more utility, more usefulness than others. I'm not convinced that treating someone who is very sick is less useful than building a machine. I think the distinction between more important than trade, we have to be a bit careful. And this is the whole essence of a free market, is of course that people can